the ashes of Earth. The sky was fire. What had once been a thriving blue marble teeming with life was now a graveyard of flame and ruin. Earth, humanity's home, had been turned to cinders by the Galactic Empire's wrath. The attack had come without warning, without provocation. Billions died in hours, their cries of horror lost in the infernal roar of orbital bombardments. Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge of the Archangel, a battle-worn cruiser that had escaped the slaughter. His eyes were locked onto the live feed from the last operational spy satellite still circling Earth. Cities had been reduced to craters, oceans boiled into steaming wastelands, and the very air itself had turned toxic. The Galactic Empire had not just conquered humanity, they had sought to erase it. A transmission crackled through the bridge's speakers. The voice belonged to Admiral Thaurex, a high-ranking officer of the Imperial fleet. It was calm, almost condescending. Let this be a lesson to all who would defy Imperial rule. Humanity's defiance has been corrected. There will be no negotiations, no mercy. Your species is... Carter cut the transmission. He had heard enough. The survivors of humanity were scattered across the void, their fleets fragmented, their governments in shambles. Some had made it to the outer colonies before the attack. Others had fled in the chaos. But they were all that remained. Barely a fraction of humanity still lived, and even they were being hunted down by Imperial warships. Commander Sarah O'Malley, Carter's second-in-command, stepped forward. "Sir, we have received scattered reports. Some colonies survived, but they're under blockade. The Empire is wiping out any remaining pockets of resistance." Carter's jaw clenched. "How many of our ships remain?" "Less than 100, scattered across various systems. Most are damaged. We have no central command, no home." Silence settled over the bridge. They had lost everything. O'Malley swallowed hard. "What do we do, sir?" For a long moment, Carter said nothing. Then he exhaled slowly and spoke. "They wanted to erase us, to make an example of us. They think we're broken." He turned, his gaze burning with something deeper than grief, something more dangerous. "They're wrong." He activated the fleet-wide broadcast. Across every surviving human ship, his voice rang clear. "This is Captain Elias Carter of the Archangel. If you're hearing this, then you are among the last of humanity. We have lost Earth. Our families, our homes, our history, they are gone. But we are not." A pause, a breath. The fire in his voice grew. "The Empire thinks they've won. They believe they have crushed us. But they have only shown us the truth. We tried being civilized. We played by the rules. We believed in peace. And for that, they wiped us out." A beat of silence. Then the words that would shape the war to come. "We tried being civilized. Not anymore." The message spread. Across war-torn colonies, hidden bases, and refugee fleets, humanity heard their new creed. It was not a call for survival. It was a call for vengeance. The Empire had created its worst nightmare. Humanity was coming for them. A war of no mercy. The first strike was not made in anger. It was calculated, precise, a retaliation designed to send a message that humanity was done being trampled underfoot. The planet Azareth IV, a processing hub of the Galactic Empire, was the first to fall. Orbital bombardments rained down in the dead of night, illuminating the skies with unholy fire. Human strike teams descended in drop pods, storming through shattered defenses, eliminating every last vestige of Imperial authority. The screams of the oppressors did not move them. The civilians had been evacuated. Only the enforcers and collaborators remained. There would be no prisoners. General Elias Voss watched from the command deck of the UNS Retribution, his jaw set in grim determination. "Status?" he asked, his voice devoid of emotion. "Azareth, 4 is ours," came the reply from Commander Rudgeny. "Minimal resistance remains. Our troops are executing the purge." Voss nodded. "Good. No survivors. We send a message, or we invite hesitation." He turned his gaze to the main view screen, where the once proud Imperial banners were burning away in the wind. Once, humanity had extended an olive branch. Once, they had tried to reason with the Council of Lords, appealing to their supposed sense of justice. The response had been the systematic extermination of 3 billion human lives. The Empire had expected submission. Instead, they had birthed a war machine fueled by vengeance. The counterattacks began within days. Imperial war fleets surged toward the edges of human-claimed space, seeking to stamp out what they viewed as a minor rebellion. But they had underestimated humanity's resolve. There were no glorious space battles, no honorable duels between fleets. Humanity had abandoned honor in favor of annihilation. Voss ordered the activation of the Aegis Protocol, a scorched earth strategy designed to deny the enemy every advantage. Imperial fleets chasing human vessels would find themselves drawn into ambushes, their supplies raided, their communications jammed. When they finally made landfall on human worlds, they found empty cities rigged to explode, leaving nothing but radioactive husks behind. Admiral Typher of the Galactic Empire seethed as he watched the reports coming in. "They fight like vermin," he spat. "No honor, no courage, just traps and cowardice." "No, Admiral," whispered his second-in-command, a rare moment of fear creeping into his voice. "They fight like something far worse. They fight like a people with nothing left to lose." It did not take long for the first true atrocity of the war to be committed. When the imperial world of Syndralis fell to human forces, the rules of engagement shattered completely. Entire cities were razed, not just military outposts. Prisoners were executed en masse. It was not the Empire that set the precedent for total war, it was humanity. And the Empire, for the first time in its millennia-long rule, knew fear. Voss stood before the assembled fleet commanders, his voice steady as he addressed them. "Mercy is a currency we can no longer afford. They took our families. They burned our homes. Now, we take everything from them. We will make them regret ever believing that humanity could be conquered." The battle cries of his officers echoed through the chamber, the sound of a species that had abandoned its chains. The war had begun, and there would be no mercy. The rise of the warlords. The war had begun as a desperate struggle for survival. Now, it was transforming into something else entirely. Humanity no longer fought as a unified people under a single banner. Splinter factions had emerged, each commanded by warlords who sought vengeance in their own way. Some were idealists, fighting to ensure humanity's survival. Others were little more than reavers, embracing destruction for its own sake. General Elias Voss saw the shift coming, but was powerless to stop it. From the bridge of the UNS Retribution, he watched as former allies carved out their own fiefdoms in the wreckage of Imperial space. Some still fought under the banner of the Earthborn Confederation, while others abandoned the notion of nations altogether. To them, war was no longer a means to an end. It was the end itself. Among the most feared was Admiral Katrin Volkov. Once a respected officer in the unified Earth Navy, she had grown disillusioned with High Command's cautious strategies. When the Empire raised her homeworld of New Petrograd, she cast aside all restraints. Her forces, known as the Black Suns, struck without warning, leaving nothing but debris and silence in their wake. To Volkov, survival meant extinction. Humanity would either erase the Empire from existence or be erased itself. Then there was Marcus Reeve, a former corporate magnate turned warlord, who carved out an empire of his own amid the ruins of imperial bureaucracy. He did not seek vengeance, he sought power. His Crimson-packed forces enslaved conquered imperial citizens, forcing them into labor camps to fuel his growing war machine. He was a man who had learned from the Empire's cruelty and refined it into something even more efficient. Voss slammed his fist on the command table as reports of these factions reached him. "They're fracturing us from within. We started this war as soldiers. Now we're little more than raiders. If this continues, we'll destroy ourselves before the Empire ever can." Commander Rudjani, ever his voice of reason, shook her head. "This was inevitable, Elias. The moment we abandoned civilization, we opened the door to warlords. Now, we either bring them back under control, or we accept that humanity has changed." But control was an illusion. The war had unleashed something that could never be tamed. The Empire had believed they were putting down a rebellion. Instead, they had unleashed a force that did not care for rules, for borders, or for morality. Humanity had become something new, something terrifying. Admiral Typhur watched from the imperial capital as his fleets burned, his armies crumbled, and his people cowered. The Empire had always believed in its own superiority, convinced that humanity would fold beneath their might. Now, for the first time, they faced an enemy that did not seek negotiation or surrender. They faced extinction. The warlords of humanity were rising, and there would be no peace. The fall of the Empire. The Galactic Empire had ruled for millennia, its dominions spanning thousands of worlds, its fleets unmatched in power. But all things end, and as the war dragged on, it became clear the Empire's time was over. The cracks had been showing for years. Humanity's warlords had sown chaos, dismantling supply lines, annihilating entire fleets, and reducing once proud imperial cities to ruins. The once mighty Imperial Armada, a force that had subjugated countless species, was now a tattered shadow of itself, scattered and leaderless. From the bridge of the UNS Retribution, General Elias Voss watched the final stage of the war unfold. The imperial capital, Cirith Prime, was under siege. The last stronghold of the Empire, its planetary shields flickering under relentless bombardment, stood as a testament to a fading power. Humanity had come for its vengeance, and there would be no negotiations. Final reports from our scouts, Commander Rajani said, stepping beside him. Most of the Imperial fleet has fled. Typhur himself is in the capital, but he has nowhere to run. Voss nodded. Then we end this. Order all ships to commence planetary assault. The Empire dies today. As the order was given, the sky above Cirith Prime became a hell's cape of descending fire. Orbital stations crumbled under human bombardment, and ground forces stormed the streets. The resistance was fierce at first, but the Imperials fought like men who had already lost. There was no saving the Empire, only delaying the inevitable. Deep within the Imperial Palace, Admiral Typhur sat alone in his war room, the last remnants of his command staff either dead or having abandoned him. He had spent his life believing in the Empire's eternal rule, convinced that no force could ever threaten its supremacy. Now, he listened as explosions drew closer, as the screams of his people echoed through the corridors. The doors burst open. Human soldiers stepped inside, their rifles raised. And behind them, Elias Voss entered, his gaze cold and unyielding. "This is the end, Typhur," Voss said. "You know why we're here. You know what you've done." Typhur exhaled slowly. "We were destined to rule. You were meant to serve." Voss's expression did not change. "You were wrong." The execution was swift. Typhur's body hit the ground, and with it, the Galactic Empire ceased to exist. Outside, humanity's warlords wasted no time. Some seized former imperial territories for themselves. Others, like Voss, still dreamed of rebuilding something better. But one thing was clear: humanity had won, and in doing so, had become something far more dangerous than the Empire had ever been. The war was over, but the true battle for the future had only just begun.